Hi, I'm Phil Hardwick, and welcome once again to the News and Views from the Stennis Institute. My guest today is Dr. Marty Wiseman, Executive Director of the Institute, and we're talking about Super Tuesday. Welcome, Dr. Wiseman. Tell us a little bit about when Super Tuesday is in Mississippi and what you see happening on that day.
Well, Super Tuesday is tomorrow, the 6th of March. And of course, a lot of people are looking at it and wondering about history of Super Tuesday. It hadn't been around, but since around 1980, it was, as I understand it and vaguely remember it, put together to mainly emphasize the power of the southern states when they voted together. Used to have the old Democratic solid South, and as that began to deteriorate, the preferences of southern states in both the Republicans and the Democratic Party were viewed by folks, politicians in that area, as being so important that we needed to have a big public display. I think the original Super Tuesday had like 24 states that aggregated on that day, and that was a lot of clout. That was like literally a national primary for the presidential election. Now, a lot has changed since then, and you've had states that felt like they got more of the spotlight by picking their own date and going different places. So now we're down to 10 or 11 states on Super Tuesday, but it's still the most delegates that will be given out on any one day, 420 in that neighborhood. So it makes it important, and as close, I'll have to say, is as one who doesn't play but who buys a ticket to every contest on the 50-yard line. This has been one of the most interesting drawn-out political contests that I've ever seen, and the effort on the Republican side of every candidate to carve out what's left of the right and get as far right as they can. Number one, makes it interesting because of some of the positions they've had to take, but number two, I can't wait to see how the winner pivots to come back and start grabbing those in the middle, because they have been so resolute on some of their positions that then to have to come back and modify those somewhat is going to be an interesting political exercise to see that. But the big thing tomorrow, and it is in the election too, is Ohio, one of the Super Tuesday states, and right now it's a virtual tie between Santorum and Romney. If you remember back in the 2004 election, where George W. Bush won the second term against John Kerry, had Kerry won Ohio, he would have won the election. And so Ohio seems to always be in the thick of things. And their sentiments go back and forth enough that, it's going to be interesting to see who gets the nod from there. And then also how you don't have a Democrat in this thing, because Obama's got it locked up, and so he's sitting on the sidelines waiting. But tomorrow will probably tell the tale on whether Newt Gingrich survives or not. He's got to win Georgia. He had originally planned to win Georgia, Tennessee, and Oklahoma, which is kind of a little band going across the South. And if he could do that, then he could convince Adelson out in Las Vegas that he has the horsepower and could continue getting the contributions it takes to get involved. And that's the other story of this whole election, is the super PACs and how they have implemented Citizens United. And it's really, there'll be a lot of books written about this election.
Seems the big election news this weekend was regarding Rush Limbaugh and some comments that he made. The news today is that 7 of his advertisers have suspended or withdrawn commercial support. So how's the Rush Limbaugh comment issue going to play in these elections tomorrow?
Well, there are those that are still aghast that Romney has had a very tepid rebuke of Rush Limbaugh and his comments, only saying that's not the language I would use. While on the Democratic side, they are simply calling him the spokesman for the Republican Party. So, as I've heard it referred to, both Santorum and Romney and Gingrich to some extent are between a rock and a hard place. What Rush says is exactly what the hard right segment of the base wanted to hear him say, so that's fine with them. To walk that back, if you're a candidate, do you walk away from those on the far right? And so Romney hadn't discovered a good way to do that yet. And so, yeah, it's still in play, and there are a lot of very insulted women out there. I think Joe Scarborough said this morning, said even his wife, who is a diehard Republican, and he was a Republican himself, said, look, can't you stick to the economy and leave us alone, meaning women? And that is a huge block of independence, particularly suburban women and everything, that they are risking losing. And, you know, they're doing a similar thing with Hispanics over the immigration issue. Can you win with over 50 portly, bald-headed white gentlemen? And that's your base, and you know, it'll be interesting to see. Finally,
there's some states, whoever wins, if they win a majority, they get all the delegates from that state. Other states, there are formulas. Other states, they split. What do we do in Mississippi?
That is one that I would have a very difficult time answering. It's very layered. It's not winner take all as it is in some states. And each party can tweak its own process a little bit. The Democrats are engaged in the caucus process. They've had the precinct caucuses heading toward the county caucuses and everything now. And how Mississippi will assign its 40 Republican delegates is something that I would have a very difficult time without a great deal more study to answer. Now, I will say this. I believe that Newt Gingrich is probably, if he survives Super Tuesday, in the best position to carry Mississippi and Alabama, which next door to each other, and have their primaries on the same day. I don't think Mississippians will embrace the patrician, New England patrician George Romney, who is also a Mormon, and you still hear a great deal of concern from conservative evangelicals in the South that they are very concerned about voting for a Mormon. Santorum is from Pennsylvania, speaks a different language, hadn't got a lot to identify himself with the South other than some positions, but Gingrich is going to play the Georgia card across neighboring Alabama and the next state over Mississippi, and I think will, if he still appears to be very viable by a week from now, has a good chance of winning Mississippi.
Thank you. Dr. Marty Wiseman, Executive Director of the Stennis Institute. Till next week, I'm Phil Hardwick.